Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of APSS Bookselling University, Publish or Perish, publishing for faculty, scholars, and higher education. Know before you sign. This course is BSU 183, and I'm your host, Dr. Cheryl Lentz. Here's a little bit about me so you'll understand my credentials in teaching the course. I'm 18 years as a college professor, 35-time published author, 18-time award-winning author, and an international best-selling author. I have 54 doctoral graduates to my name, 3 faculty awards. I'm a business owner of the Lentz Leadership Institute and the famous Refractive Thinker series for doctoral scholars, and I'm known as the academic entrepreneur. I have one foot in the graduate world of academia, and I have another foot in the world of business. If you want to know more about me, drcherylentz.com is my website, and you'll see an introduction video that I have on my YouTube channel, drcherylentz.com. So let's work a little bit about what this course description is going to be about. Congratulations, first and foremost, on being a college graduate and obtaining your master's or your doctorate degree. Well done. And the fact that you're now hired on faculty of ACME University, absolutely brilliant. The university does expect you to publish, and sometimes many don't know where to start. So let's see if I can't help unravel those mysteries as part of this course for you. The benefits we're going to look at are discovering what makes publishing so important to university faculty and your career. You're going to learn to navigate the world of peer-reviewed journals, books, and publications, and to enhance your credibility as an expert, to position yourself as the expert in your field. So what is the difference between book publishing and academic publishing? We're going to look at what is a peer-reviewed journal, how do you find peer-reviewed journals, learning about the 3 publishing myths and how to protect yourself, as well as to learn about the rule of 3 and how to use this strategy to effectively manage your academic publishing career. Here are the challenges with higher education as I see them. Oftentimes, students aren't really taught how to go to school. I kind of figured these things out about spring semester my senior year of my undergraduate career. And I often thought, wouldn't it have been helpful if I would have learned to manage these systems when I was first going to the university instead of nearly by the time that I graduated. Graduates are also not taught what to do after graduation, particularly the doctoral scholar. So the purpose of this course is to help you as a new graduate help navigate this world of academic publishing so you can meet the expectations of your university. So let's look at the difference between book publishing and academic publishing. First and foremost, an author is not always considered an academic scholar. So I want to look at dictionary.com and the idea of the definition is really your academic credentials of knowledge acquired by study, your master's degree and your doctorate degree, in order to attain the title and the expectation of what and who a scholar is. Now, an author can be an academic scholar and have this concept of being peer-reviewed. Now, the definition of peer-reviewed, offered by Merriam-Webster for us, is a process by which something is proposed, say for research, publication, think the IRB, think the Journal of Leadership Studies, is evaluated by a group of experts in the appropriate field. Think about, for example, the idea of astronomy. You have the actual academics and experts of the Academic Council of Astronomers, and they will get together. And when we looked at the idea at one time when I was growing up, we actually had 9 planets. Well, as a result of this meeting of the minds, the top experts in astronomy, poor Pluto has been relegated to a dwarf planet, and so is no longer considered part of the Big 9, and now we have 8 planets. And as these classifications will change, the experts in the field are what determines the evaluation before something is published, hence the word peer, expert, peer-reviewed. So the idea of a peer-reviewed article is looking at a specific journal, the Journal of Astronomy, Psychology Today, the Journal of Leadership Studies, the Refractive Thinker. They all must undergo the following process. The author of the article must submit their article first to the journal editors and the peer-reviewed panel for their evaluation as experts in their field. And they will look at the value and the quality of the empirical evidence, the quality of the writing, the evidence and research and data on which their conclusions are based, etc. So it's not something that someone simply publishes, but everyone is going to be empirically evaluating the nature of their article before the reputation of both the scholar and the journal becomes interested. So here's the idea of some academic terms we need to understand. Peer review, which we're looking at, and referee journals or scholarly journals. Pretty much the same thing. Many people use them interchangeably. But this information, I want to let you know, came from Angelo State University, and I just love how they've organized it for us. But I want to be able to discuss the idea of the different categories of information resources. Obviously, we have newspapers, we have magazines. Magazines are not the same as journals. These are what the air quotes facts or information. Articles are written by reporters or journalists who may or may not be experts necessarily in the field that they're reporting on. So consequently, articles may be written with a particular slant or bias. Think maybe political agendas, TV and radio stations, or maybe they're written from only a specific point of view to fit a specific narrative. At best, many are incomplete. I often offer my students the exercises to follow one story on at least 5 or 6 different news outlets, be it radio, TV, online, social media, and they still report that they aren't completely in charge of exactly what's happened because everybody has their different perspective. And so when you're looking at any one article, you have to make sure you're getting the complete story. As we've talked, journal articles are written by academics and professionals. And although these articles are written by these supposed experts, how is their expertise determined? Is it self-proclaimed? Is it self-reported? Is it credentialed? We talked about looking at what the definition of a scholar is as someone who has a master's degree, a doctorate degree, etc. And so this is where the additional credibility comes from a peer-reviewed or scholarly journal. The idea that these are credentialed and acknowledged in the marketplace of these expertise, so their credibility are absolutely not in question. Hence, I started out our class today giving you my resume, as it were, so that you understand that I have earned the right to teach you, that I have that experience, which is what an expert should have in order for you to be able to believe in the credibility of the information that they're giving you. And so that's what peer-reviewed offers. Many students, when you're looking and going to school, a student will have the challenge of, but I'm learning about something, but I don't yet know all about that something. So how do I balance and find the most credible sources? Most of the articles in a university's library, for example, there's usually a box like EBSCOhost or ProQuest or something like that that will have a little box that says peer-reviewed. And so that you will know as a student, and your faculty will also, and it's a requirement for thesis, graduate thesis, or doctoral dissertations, so that you have the ability that you know of the quality of the information, even though as you, the student, do not yet possess all of the facts. You're going to be rest assured that you're being taught by the experts because of that peer review designation. And the interesting thing is that peer reviewed is also done in a blind, single blind and double blind. What that means is that the reviewers don't know who the person is that's submitting the article, so that they're not influenced or biased by a particular name or gender or ethnicity or any type of cultural factor. So these are very important elements when you're going to now join this community of doctoral scholars in peer-reviewed journals. You know exactly what you're looking at. And I'll give you an example, and it's a very important distinction, is that we're looking at having the idea of, I am a doctoral scholar, I have earned my doctorate degree, I've been a scholar since 2007, and so I'm looking at the opportunity to have written many books, as I gave you in my resume that started this class. Well, here are 2 examples. One is peer-reviewed and one is not. To the left is an award-winning book I wrote with another scholar called The Consumer Learner many years ago, an award winner. But because I wrote the book and I'm considered a doctoral scholar, it's not considered peer-reviewed. Even when you look at a textbook, for example, if you write, and I've written in several textbooks, it's considered by an editor, not necessarily a peer-reviewed panel. And so you really need to be particular when you're having to look at qualifications in academic publishing for your university. The book on the right, The Refractive Thinker, does have a peer-reviewed panel of experts on the specific topic, as well as academic editors that are going to be all part of this peer-reviewed panel to make sure that before this journal goes to publication, it's going to have that credibility by experts in the field. So here are some publishing myths that we want to be able to look at as well. There's 3 big ones as I see it that really trip up a lot of scholars, and I want to make sure that you make an informed decision. Publishing costs money. It doesn't matter if it's a peer-reviewed journal such as Astronomy Today, Forbes magazine online, the University of Illinois Press. They're all needing some kind of finance to pay the bills. The reason one doesn't have to pay to publish in a peer-reviewed journal often is that the journal uses proceeds from the sale of the journal to fund the journal. So think of the fact that many academic publishing houses, the Chicago University Press or the Harvard Review Press, these are academic publishing houses that are either funded by grants or foundations or by the universities they're associated with. And so when you publish in a peer-reviewed journal, the process is simply that you're not going to pay them, they're not going to pay you. You're going to offer the ability to submit this through the process. Usually you will have an abstract, and an abstract is about 150 to 250 words. You're going to submit this to the journal, and then the process will evaluate whether or not they will publish and choose to publish it. But that whole process, even with volunteer peer reviewers, which is often the case, does cost money. The money of publishing, the money of putting it to print, et cetera, et cetera. And so what many people struggle with when they look at publications they have to pay for, the idea is you have to look at who owns your copyright. So follow the money. The journal makes money from your copyright. You don't. Now, I am a peer reviewer on 3 different journals, Sage Open being one of them. And I am sometimes paid for my reviews. I am sometimes not paid for my reviews. Most of the time I am not. But the question is, does paying for publishing detract from my credibility? Many people believe this, many universities believe this, but think about the fact that whether I pay to publish in a journal or whether I have the journal who's going to own my copyright, somebody has to pay for this. And whether I am paid as a peer reviewer to review your material or not, I don't believe that it in any way detracts, because my skills as a peer reviewer are the same whether I get paid or whether I volunteer. So publishing is a business like any other. The goal is to make money, or at the very least to cover the costs of publishing in there, because it's very expensive. There's lots of moving parts, from ISBN numbers to the costs of publication, whether it's printed, whether it's digital. I mean, there's just like any business. And so the question is who is making the money? And you do get what you pay for. Peer-reviewed journal model is the publisher pays for the cost that you don't. The publisher owns your material as a result of that. You don't. The publisher makes the royalties, you don't. The publisher has the control, you don't. So the question really becomes, what is the goal? Now, of those 35 publications that I have indicated that I personally have, 5 of them are peer-reviewed in peer-reviewed journals. The challenge has become, however, is the timing. I just had one that a new graduate of mine who is in Switzerland, we published in the Journal of Aviation Management, and we participated in their conference. The challenge became is when we participated in their conference, it was 2 years from the date of that conference from which our article is published in the journal. That's a long time when you're looking at the timeliness of research, when you're looking at the idea of publishing. That publication was based on the work my student I did on his dissertation. And by the time he published that information was already probably 6 to 8 months dated, because it takes a while to go through the process and conduct research and have the research reviewed by the university, etc. And so when you look at publishing your findings to share with the world what you found, be it a capstone in your graduate program for your master's degree or in your dissertation for your doctorate degree, the challenge is the timeliness that we want to be able, so by the time you make it to publication and you're sharing your news with the world, that it's current, it's relevant. The challenge becomes with many peer-reviewed publications is the time that it takes to do that. In our case, it was 2 years. And so the idea is looking at making an informed decision as part of navigating these waters for publishing your materials, to look at the pros and the cons. And so the challenge that becomes from a payment standpoint is who pays for the publishing is nothing to do with the quality of the work published, in my opinion, in there. We're looking at, so long as your peer review process is using the blind features, it's looking at the quality of the peer reviewers who are on staff, you're looking at the ability to, whether I get paid or not as a peer reviewer, doesn't diminish my skills and my knowledge as a doctoral scholar as part of the peer review problem. So, in my opinion, so long as the process includes a peer-reviewed process, such as open, single, or double-blind, there's a quality mechanism in place. And if your article is based on IRB-approved research through the accredited university, which is often the case with peer-reviewed journals because they want to take this research and they want to get it out to the public to share their findings with them, that this doctoral work or postdoctoral work, the quality of these outcomes have already been vetted. And we don't want to call the quality of our universities into question because this is what the accreditation processes do, so that it takes a long time to complete these research studies. So when these research studies are published, the quality of the information should be there. And so the idea of where you're publishing with it and the time that it takes to publishing in there has got to be an informed decision on your part so that you can make the idea. What often is the case is that many people don't know about these different parameters, and so they sign a contract not realizing what happens and what the contract means. For example, this leads us to myth number 3. When I publish in a journal or in a book, don't I automatically own my intellectual property? And the answer is no. You need to really check the fine print of your contract. As we suggested, is that many peer-reviewed traditional publications, you don't pay the journal as the scholar. The journal doesn't pay you, but most of the time the journal owns the copyright to your writing as listed in the contract. When you sign the contract, you transfer it, but you don't own it. So you need to look at the idea of who's making money and whether or not that's important to you. Because again, there may be an opportunity that it's not of concern to you, that you don't want to own your copyright. You don't want to monetize the copyright, but you still need to understand who owns it. And essentially follow the money. If you file for your own copyright, you simply go to the U.S. Copyright Office. It will take, in my experience, before I publish anything, I apply for a copyright, and in order to, if something should happen, the law requires that you have what's known as this copyright medallion. You don't necessarily have to have the medallion in your possession, but you do have to have the application made. And so you would go to the U.S. Copyright Office, you would pay your $55, you would put all of the details about the article or the graphic or whatever it is that you're copywriting. And sometimes I've had folks get their copyright as quickly as three months. I just had one of my graduates. Our average for me is about 6 to 9 months. A few years ago, there was a big shakeup at the Copyright Office, about 2005, I think. And it was something that took a little bit longer. It took us about 2.5 years. But the idea is if you go to court, you want to prove to the judge that you actually own your copyright. But this ownership of copyright is the idea to monetize your work. So this is not a good thing or a bad thing. This is just a thing. You want to be able to understand going, well, what is the goal of your publishing? If the goal of the publishing is you want to be able to have the control of where that information goes, then you have to own your own copyright. When you publish in a peer-reviewed journal, you can never use that article again. You can't market it. You can't, other than telling people and putting it on your CV or your academic resume, you have to be able to give them their ability. They market it, they collect the royalties of it, they're in control of it. And maybe that's okay for you, but many people aren't aware that going, oh, I didn't know I didn't own it. It's like, check your contract. Very few peer-reviewed journals will give you the ability to own your own copyright. And that's why there's the purpose of this course, so that you will have the ability to understand exactly what you're saying yes or no to make an informed decision. And that's where the first part of this presentation came into fact of, we don't often in academia teach our graduates what to do when they graduate. We give them the expectation when they're hired as a faculty. And think of this as a marketing opportunity, right? The university for whom that has hired you because of your credibility, because of your credentials. Oftentimes they will hire you as the reputation that you bring to the university, whether you're well published, whether you're award winning, whether you're a Nobel Prize winner, whether you're bringing grant money to the university. These are all elements that are going to allow the university to market you as part of their faculty with your credentials to bring students in to the university because of their world-class faculty. You'll often hear universities that will suggest going, well, all of our faculty have doctorate degrees. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be able to teach in higher ed to have one. I started my career with a master's degree and eventually earned my doctorate. But many universities find that if you're going to be investing the kinds of money that higher education now demands and commands, that you want to have the highest quality faculty, and publishing is what allows this additional credibility for these universities when they're hiring, to be able to look at what you as the faculty bring to the table. And by using what's going to segue now into our rule of three, the idea is, how do you intentionally create such a reputation that makes you very valuable and attractive to these universities? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to share that with you. I like to call it the rule of three, because I think it's an effective strategy that helps managing your publishing career, because many of these things you're going to do are going to cost money. And I know it was a surprise to me going, now listen, I have spent and invested sometimes with students hundreds of thousands of dollars in my education, and the assumption was that people would pay me to go out and present and to publish and do all of these things as a result of my credibility and my credentials and my education and my reputation. That's not quite the case. Becoming a scholar, particularly new, and is often a challenge, not unlike becoming a teenager, where you need a job to get a job. Many of you may have, the struggle you have to get that first job, right? You may have a high school diploma. You may have, be your first job that you're working at something, and you need the experience to get the job. You need the job to get the experience. So it's very much of a chicken or the egg scenario. And so in publishing in particular, when you are often competing for a university position, whether it is adjunct faculty, full-time, tenure tracker, etc., you're competing against 300 to 400 other folks who have often the same credentials as you, particularly with a new graduate. If you only have a doctorate degree, and not that I want to diminish that in any way, I know how hard it is, particularly as a doctoral mentor, to earn that doctoral degree. But the challenge becomes when you are competitive in the marketplace and you are competing against 300 or 400 colleagues who also have a doctorate in a various field. The challenge is, what are you bringing to the table that's different? And again, these are the types of things I like to use the rule of three, is to look at least three every single year. So you can start positioning yourself and branding yourself as the expert, and offering these opportunities for the universities to be able to look at all of the extra things that you have in addition to your doctorate degree. So this may be presenting at an academic conference or an association symposium or university event. I recommend that you start local. Most of these will have a cost associated with them. Think of these as a fundraising or marketing opportunity for the university. Many of them have yearly events, and it will often cost you anywhere between $350 to $750, even when you are the one submitting. And yes, I can hear you in the background saying, but Doc C, I'm the one who's presenting at the conference. Shouldn't they pay me? Not quite. It's considered a registration fee, and the university or the association or the Academy of Management or any of these, large organizations, that's how their funding comes through in portion of it for the various elements, is there's going to be a registration fee. And that can be substantial depending on what you're doing. I've seen some of these fees as high as $1,000. And if you couple that with travel, airplane fares, hotel fares, meals, etc., it can get expensive. Now, while I am not a tax accountant, and this is not to be in any way construed as any tax advice, I would conduct and contact your tax accountant, because as a scholar, these are considered part of your career. These are things that you can talk to your accountant about, of being able to put as part of your taxes for the end of the year. So this is where I suggest is start local, go to the local university that's near you, so that you only have to look at submitting your abstract. That's kind of an interview to tell them what you'll be talking about when you're accepted. Typically, you can present at the conference. I like to have twofers, which means a 2-for-1 opportunity, just like my student or graduate and I not only presented at the conference, but as part of the conference, there was an academic journal that went in tandem with the conference. Took many years to publish, but it was still something about our, the one-time fee we paid that had those additional benefits. As your budget increases, as your expertise increases, you can start traveling internationally. I have been keynote speaking in Poland, and we presented in Greece, and I've presented at the University of British Columbia. Again, these are all wonderful opportunities to expand your reach, to expand your positioning as yourself as an expert, but it's expensive. And the more that you're looking at going to these places, it does include all these ancillary expenses, and it can be costly. Now, some universities will either pay for it completely, or have a stipend towards it, or will expect you to do it and maybe just give you the time off for it. So this is where, as you're interviewing for universities, let me also, as part of this strategy, invite you to ask the questions about some of these benefits and whether or not the university you're working for will sponsor you or contribute to your expenses as you go to these events, because the universities do expect you. Remember, the title of this was Publish or Perish. They expect you to be current. Some universities will have a requirement of either you, in order to maintain your academic standing at the university, you have to publish once a year, maybe once every 5 years. With tenure track faculty, there are very specific requirements of what you publish, where you publish, how often you publish, et cetera, et cetera. And so let me again encourage you, as part of this publishing expectation, that you read the contracts and you understand the expectations, and or perhaps work with someone who is a bit of ahead of you in the process, because there's no need to reinvent the wheel, because this is a lot of information. It took me about 3 years to navigate and understand the expectations here in this world. Within academia. Now, you can also teach and present at a faculty meeting. I often do a lot of training, graduation meetings, faculty meetings, whether in person or online. These are excellent opportunities, maybe a lunch and learn. You can publish in a peer-reviewed journal. You can publish in a magazine, but again, remember, your university may or may cannot count it, depending on what that may be a part of your requirements for that university. I'm on faculty for several universities. Their requirements are all different. I do a lot of additional things because, as you mentioned, my moniker is known as the academic entrepreneur. I have one foot in the academic world, one foot in the business world. And so I do a lot of things both in business and in academia. For example, I am published in Forbes magazine. I am published in Entrepreneur magazine. If you go to my doctoralcherylentz.com, you'll see all of the various things. I'm a regular guest on radio shows. I will have my own radio show in the fall of September 2018. With Voice America. And so therein lies the rule of 3, is to look from this list. This is certainly not comprehensive by any means, but it does offer the opportunity to give you options of where you can publish and things that will enhance your credibility and get your name out there, branding yourself personally as the expert that you are. It's not going to come to you as a result of what I thought. Well, I have my doctorate degree now. People are going to be building a path to my doorway, right? A super highway. And it's not the case. And many academics are very disappointed that in order to have these opportunities cross your path, you really have to be proactive to seek them out. And so I try to do a balance of a variety of things, whether it's the radio shows, whether it's publishing on LinkedIn. I find that to be a helpful article. I also have my own blog that I do. You can publish your own book. Just understand the difference, as we discussed, the difference between a scholar who's publishing their own book, or publishing a peer-reviewed book. There aren't many of those. Or publishing in a textbook, or publishing for a textbook, or publishing things that are supplemental to a textbook. So the odds are using publishing strategically to make sure that you're having an opportunity to look at all of the different requirements for your university, as well as other, think of these as best practices, things that many of us have had wonderful experience that have enhanced our careers. And one of the questions I often get asked is, well, how did you start? I started very much with things on this list as budget could afford it. I started locally at some of the universities near me. Then I started branching out. I started understanding how the tax code worked. I started understanding at the various universities I taught, and as they had stipends or honorariums or contributions. Sometimes when you put in for reimbursement for a university, they have a specific cap. Sometimes it's given to you simply because you published or you participated. Some it's competitive. And so you really just have to know, and most new university scholars with their doctorate or their masters simply don't know how all of this stuff works. And it can be very daunting not to have the details so you know how to prepare yourself. So I suggest you take classes like this and you keep working, and you know the culture at your university. Sometimes it's different whether you're teaching at a community college, which, believe it or not, some pay better at a community college and also have tenure track. It depends on where you go, where you teach, how often you teach, and what your intention is. Some folks will be a full-time academic, others will do it part-time and be a practitioner academic because they have a full-time job and they want to simply teach in the evenings or something. A variety of options, but we want to be able to know that as I have progressed in my career, I now do get paid for many of these things that I once had to pay for as a result of, so think of it as you don't, it's not just one aggregate event. For example, you publish a book on Amazon, and this is an interesting opportunity that many people assume that if you build it, they will come. Not quite the case. Amazon in particular has, and I'm sure you'll have the other courses here that are offered by Bookselling University, is that there's over 300,000 or more books published every year. The idea is marketing is how are people going to find you? I use a technique on Amazon.com called Author Central. It is a free opportunity that Amazon offers that I can put all of my books there. So if somebody wants to buy a book from me on Amazon, they can look and see all of the other books that I have. And success breeds success. When you are a one-hit wonder, you have your first book, people start looking at you. And it's a magical opportunity when you send somebody or you give them a copy of your book. I mean, it's literally magic when you see your name and you see the forward and some of the things. And the more you have, the more people think it enhances your credibility, gives you additional points, if you will. And so the idea is now expanding. So I will do all kinds of books. Sometimes I have scholar books. Sometimes I have a passion for my philanthropy as Siberian Husky Rescue. I have a book published on Siberian Husky Rescue that I allow the nonprofits to be able to use as a fundraiser for their Siberian Huskies across the country. And so this is where you need to do some planning. And you need to make some decisions and think about what's the end game. How is it that you want to be identified as the expert in your field in terms of getting the outcome you want? Do you want to be a motivational speaker? Do you want to be a college professor? Do you want to be part-time, full-time, adjunct, tenure track? There's all kinds of different ways, and each one of them has a different path to success. So I think the rule of three here is going to be very important, but it needs to be paired with what I call an outcome-based approach. Start at the end and work backwards. What's the goal? There's also a technique called informational interviewing. Go find someone who has achieved your goal and ask them how they got there. Much the same way we're doing this type of a opportunity in a class for you today is to give you some of these best practices. The secret to success as an academic is to learn to enhance your credibility as an expert, to position yourself as the expert in your field, but you need to know how. And again, we in academia don't often teach the how at all, of just suggesting and congratulating to you, you're now a doctoral scholar, you wait for your diploma, and we as academics move on to the next student. I work with a lot of my academic mentees to be able to help train them in that next step so that they don't feel they have been put out there without well, I didn't know we had to do this, and what does it mean to do this with regard to academic publishing? And so our goal here as part of Bookselling University is to be able to give these pieces to the puzzle so that you can learn more about your options, strategically move forward effectively, and make informed decisions. Academic publishing is very different than the regular mainstream publishing or business publishing in there. But the goals are still the same, of being able to start at the end and look at what is the end goal for you. I will admit that my very first book, I just wanted to publish a book. I didn't give much thought to what the end game was. And now that I've published more than 35 of them, I'm very strategic in who I publish with, if I'm going to joint publish, where I publish, and to look, as we looked at that list, of how many things that I do a year. I still follow the rule of three. I try to expand and write with many different scholars, different publications, to show my versatility, to show my expansiveness and expertise beyond simply my field leadership, which is what my doctorate degree was in, and the expertise in my dissertation. So I want to offer you, hopefully, that this course is giving you those benefits that will help launch your career, and know that you have to take a proactive stance as a scholar to position yourself as attractive to the universities or consulting firms or business owners or joint ventures, or however you deem success in your world. It needs to be something that you are in control of. hopefully what I have offered you as part of this course will give you many more things to think about of going, wow, talk to many people in your field, look at some of the mainstream opportunities that are being offered as part of APSS, as well as your mentors that you will find, because a lot of what I have done in my career has been a result of seeking out mentors who are ahead of me in the process and asking them what they've done. Some of them have been free, some of them have been paid business coaches and mentors to be able to know what they know so that I can get there faster. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There's no need to go it alone. And there's no need to take years and years and years like I did to figure it out eventually, because you'll get there. But the idea of having a mentor or a coach or taking knowledge as power is to get there faster so that you won't make the same mistakes that I did. I will give you one quick things to think about before we end this, but you see my name, you see my email address. Feel free as part of the program. I'm happy to support you in any way that I can. But I remember when I published my first book and I didn't understand about copyright in particular, I nearly had to contact attorneys, and it took me nearly 6 months to get my copyright back. And it was simply ignorance, nothing more. I just didn't know how the world of publishing, specifically in academic, and what I had to do worked. So my last piece of advice to you as part of this course is please don't reinvent the wheel. Find someone and take these courses, because knowledge is power. A lot of things that go on, particularly in this world of digital opportunities on the internet, you need to protect yourself and to make sure that you're armed with information so you don't fall victim to ignorance and maybe not get as far as you want in your career as a result of simply not knowing how the game is played and what the rules are. So I wish you the very best success. Again, my name is Dr. Cheryl Lentz. It's been a pleasure hosting this class with you. And if there's anything that I can do to help you, please feel free to reach out. I look forward to hearing from you. Good luck to you.